Naomi's hands trembled slightly as she arranged the final champagne flute on the silver tray. The Castello dining room gleamed under the massive crystal chandelier. 20 guests would be arriving any moment for what Victoria Castello had called the most important dinner party of the season. Naomi! Victoria's sharp voice cut through the kitchen. Come here, now. Naomi set down the tray and smoothed her black uniform dress, the one Victoria insisted all the staff wear during formal events. She'd been working for the Castello family for 18 months, and in that time, she'd perfected the art of being invisible. Victoria Castello stood in the hallway, examining her reflection in an ornate mirror. At 34, she was stunning in a calculated way. Sleek blonde hair, a red Valentino gown that probably cost more than Naomi made in 6 months, and diamonds that caught the light with every movement. But her beauty was cold, polished, and utterly without warmth. Tonight's guests are extremely important, Victoria said, not bothering to look at Naomi directly. Diplomats, international business associates, people who matter. I need you to serve drinks and appetizers, but do not, I repeat, do not, speak unless directly spoken to. And if anyone addresses you, keep your responses to yes, sir, or yes, ma'am. Understood? Yes, ma'am, Naomi replied quietly. Good. And Naomi? Victoria finally turned, her ice blue eyes scanning Naomi with barely concealed disdain. Try to be less noticeable. Pull your hair back tighter. These guests expect a certain level of professionalism. The words stung, as they always did. Less noticeable. More professional. Code for, we don't want them to see you as human. Naomi had heard variations of this for 18 months. Comments about her natural hair being distracting. Suggestions that she use the service entrance so guests wouldn't see her. Reminders that her role was to blend into the background like furniture. She'd endured it all because she needed this job desperately. Her younger sister Jasmine was in her final year at Howard University, and Naomi was paying every penny of her tuition. Their mother had passed away 3 years ago, and their father had disappeared long before that. It was just the two of them, and Naomi would do anything, endure anything, to give her sister the future she deserved, even if it meant swallowing her pride and accepting treatment that made her feel worthless. I understand, ma'am, Naomi said, retreating to the kitchen. Mrs. Chen, the head housekeeper, gave her a sympathetic look. Don't let her get to you, honey. That woman has ice water in her veins. I'm fine, Naomi lied, pulling her hair into an even tighter bun. What Victoria Castello didn't know, what no one in this house knew, was that Naomi wasn't just a maid. She had a bachelor's degree in international relations from Georgetown and spoke 6 languages fluently: English, Italian, French, Spanish, Mandarin, and Russian. She'd been on track for a career with the State Department before her mother's cancer diagnosis had drained their savings and derailed everything. Now she served champagne to people who didn't see her as human, but she listened, and she understood far more than anyone realized. If you're enjoying this story so far, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe. Drop a comment telling me where in the world you're watching from. I love hearing from you. The guests began arriving at 7:30. Naomi circulated through the parlor with her tray of champagne, a ghost in black and white, invisible to the men and women in designer clothes discussing business and politics. And then, Lorenzo Castello arrived. He'd been traveling for the past 2 weeks, which meant Naomi hadn't seen him since early February. At 39, Lorenzo Castello was the kind of handsome that made the air feel thinner. Dark hair with distinguished silver at the temples, a perfectly tailored Armani suit, and dark eyes that missed nothing. But it wasn't just his looks that commanded attention. Lorenzo Castello moved through the world with the quiet confidence of a man who knew exactly how much power he wielded. Everyone in the city knew what he was: Lorenzo Castello ran the most powerful organized crime family on the East Coast. His legitimate businesses, construction, real estate, high-end restaurants, were fronts for operations that the FBI had been trying to penetrate for years. He was dangerous, ruthless, and according to every staff member in the house, utterly devoted to his wife. "Champagne, Mr. Castello," Naomi offered quietly. His dark eyes met hers, and for just a moment she felt seen. "Thank you, Naomi. How have you been?" The question surprised her. In 18 months, he'd spoken to her perhaps a dozen times, always politely, always with a respect that his wife never showed. "I've been well, sir. Thank you for asking." "Good." He took a glass, then moved toward Victoria, who was holding court near the fireplace. Naomi watched as Victoria's entire demeanor shifted. Her cold beauty warmed, her laugh became genuine, her hand slipped possessively through Lorenzo's arm. The performance was flawless, the devoted wife welcoming her husband home. But Naomi had been watching Victoria Castello for 18 months, and she'd learned to recognize the difference between Victoria's public persona and the calculating woman beneath. Dinner was announced at 8 o'clock. The guests moved into the dining room where the table was set with Limoges china, baccarat crystal, and enough silverware to require a degree to navigate. Naomi and two other servers moved efficiently through the room, serving the first course while conversation flowed in multiple languages. Lorenzo sat at the head of the table, Victoria at his right hand. The guests were an eclectic mix: Italian businessmen, a French diplomat and his wife, a Chinese manufacturing executive, Russian investors, and several local politicians whose campaigns Lorenzo had undoubtedly funded. The conversation was polite, careful, the kind of surface-level discussion that happened when powerful people were still assessing each other. Naomi served wine and cleared plates, invisible as always, while her mind unconsciously translated the fragments of Italian, French, and Mandarin that floated through the air. It wasn't until the third course, a perfectly prepared branzino, that everything changed. The French diplomat, Monsieur Beaumont, was discussing trade relations with the Chinese executive, Mr. Wang. The conversation had been in English, polite and unremarkable. But as Naomi refilled Mr. Wang's wineglass, he leaned toward his wife and said something in rapid Mandarin. "This Castello is a fool. His wife has already agreed to provide us with shipping route information in exchange for our investment in her boutique hotel project. By next month, we'll have access to every port he controls." His wife laughed softly, responding in Mandarin. "And he has no idea his own wife is selling him out? Americans are so trusting." Naomi's hands went numb. The wine bottle felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. She glanced at Victoria, who was smiling serenely, clearly not understanding a word of Mandarin. Lorenzo was engaged in conversation with one of the Italian businessmen. No one had any idea what had just been said, except Naomi. She should stay silent, should finish serving and retreat to the kitchen, should protect herself and her job and her sister's future. But as she looked at Lorenzo Castello, a man who'd always treated her with basic human decency in a house where his wife made her feel worthless, Naomi felt something shift inside her chest. She'd been invisible for 18 months, silent, accepting cruelty because she needed the money. But some betrayals were too big to ignore. Naomi set down the wine bottle carefully and cleared her throat. "Excuse me, Mr. Castello." The entire table fell silent. 20 pairs of eyes turned toward her. Victoria's face flushed with fury at the interruption. "What is it, Naomi?" Lorenzo asked, his tone patient but confused. Her heart hammered against her ribs. This was career suicide. This was insanity. But she couldn't stay silent. "Sir, I apologize for interrupting, but I believe you should know what was just said." Naomi's voice was steady despite her terror. "Mr. Wang just told his wife, in Mandarin, that you're a fool because your wife has agreed to provide them with shipping route information in exchange for their investment in her boutique hotel project. He said that by next month, they'll have access to every port you control. The silence that followed was deafening. Victoria's face went white, then red, then white again. She's lying. Victoria's voice was shrill, panicked. She's a disgruntled employee trying to cause trouble. Lorenzo, you can't possibly… Naomi? Lorenzo's voice cut through his wife's protests like a blade. You speak Mandarin? Yes, sir. And Italian, French, Spanish, and Russian. Something flickered in Lorenzo's dark eyes. Respect, maybe, or calculation. And you're certain of what you heard? Completely certain, sir. Naomi turned to Mr. Wang, who had gone very still. Would you like me to repeat what you said? In Mandarin? Mr. Wang's face had turned to stone. Lorenzo stood slowly, his movement controlled but radiating danger. Victoria. My office now. Lorenzo, this is ridiculous. She's just a maid trying to… Now. The single word carried enough menace to make even Victoria fall silent. Victoria's ice-blue eyes locked onto Naomi with pure hatred, but she had no choice. She stood, her designer gown rustling, and followed her husband out of the dining room. The remaining guests sat in uncomfortable silence. Naomi stood frozen, the wine bottle still in her hand, realizing she'd just detonated a bomb in the middle of Lorenzo Castello's dinner party. Mr. Wang and his wife exchanged rapid whispers in Mandarin. Naomi understood every word. They were discussing whether to leave immediately or wait to see how the situation played out. Monsieur Beaumont cleared his throat awkwardly. Perhaps we should adjourn to the parlor for drinks? But before anyone could move, Lorenzo's voice echoed from down the hallway, not shouting, but carrying that cold, lethal quality that was somehow more terrifying than rage. Naomi's legs felt weak. What had she done? Mrs. Chen appeared at her elbow. Come with me. Now. Naomi followed the head housekeeper into the kitchen, her mind reeling. The other servers stared at her with a mixture of awe and horror. Girl, do you have any idea what you just did? Mrs. Chen whispered urgently. Victoria Castello is a traitor, Naomi finished quietly. I know what she is, and I know what he is too. But I couldn't stay silent. Not about that. Mrs. Chen studied her face for a long moment, then nodded slowly. You're either the bravest or the most foolish person I've ever met. Possibly both. Through the kitchen door, Naomi could hear the muffled sounds of the guests departing early, the dinner party clearly over. Car doors slammed. Engines started. Within 20 minutes, the house was silent except for the catering staff quietly cleaning up. Naomi helped wash wine glasses with trembling hands, waiting for the axe to fall. Would Victoria convince Lorenzo she was lying? Would she be fired? Worse, would Victoria's connections make her disappear? She thought about Jasmine, safe at Howard, probably studying for midterms with no idea that her sister had just committed professional suicide. Naomi. Antonio, Lorenzo's head of security, appeared in the kitchen doorway. The boss wants to see you in his office. This was it. The end of everything. Mrs. Chen squeezed her hand. Go. And whatever happens, you told the truth. That counts for something. Naomi walked through the silent house, her footsteps echoing on marble floors. Antonio led her to Lorenzo's private office, a room she'd cleaned hundreds of times but had never entered while he was present. The office was all dark wood and leather, bookshelves lined with first editions, and floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city lights. Lorenzo stood by those windows, his back to the door, hands in his pockets. The tension in his shoulders was visible even from across the room. Victoria was nowhere to be seen. Sir? Naomi's voice came out smaller than she'd intended. Lorenzo turned slowly. His face was carefully controlled, but something dangerous flickered in his dark eyes. Close the door. Naomi did, her heart hammering. How long have you spoken Mandarin? His voice was quiet, conversational, but Naomi heard the steel beneath it. Since I was 19, sir. I studied it at Georgetown. Georgetown. Lorenzo moved toward his desk, leaning against it. Yet you work as a maid in my house. I needed the money, my sister's tuition. I'm not judging you, Naomi. He cut her off gently. I'm trying to understand why a woman with your education would risk everything to tell me what you heard tonight. Naomi met his eyes. Because it was the right thing to do, sir. And because you've never treated me like I was invisible. Something shifted in Lorenzo's expression. For a long moment he studied her face, and Naomi felt truly seen for the first time in 18 months. My wife is gone, he said finally. Permanently. I've had my lawyers draw up divorce papers, and my accountants are currently freezing all her accounts. She'll receive nothing from me except the clothes on her back. Relief and terror warred in Naomi's chest. The Wongs are no longer a concern. I've made it clear what happens to people who try to betray me. His voice carried the weight of violence Naomi didn't want to imagine. But you, Naomi, present me with an interesting situation. Her stomach dropped. Sir? You speak 6 languages. You have a degree from Georgetown. You're observant enough to catch a betrayal that could have destroyed my entire operation. Lorenzo moved closer, his dark eyes intense. And you were brave enough, or foolish enough, to speak up when staying silent would have been safer. I don't understand what you're saying, sir. I'm saying that I need someone I can trust. Someone intelligent enough to navigate complex negotiations, multilingual enough to catch things others miss, and brave enough to tell me the truth even when it's dangerous. He stopped directly in front of her. I'm offering you a job, Naomi. Not as a maid, as my personal translator and advisor. Naomi's mind reeled. Sir, triple your current salary. Your own apartment in the guest house. Full benefits, including tuition coverage for your sister. Lorenzo's voice was matter-of-fact. In exchange, you work directly for me. You attend my meetings, you translate, you observe, and you tell me everything you see and hear. No secrets, no hesitation, complete honesty. It was everything she'd dreamed of, a way out of invisibility, a chance to use her skills, financial security for Jasmine, but it was also a door into Lorenzo Castello's world, a world of violence and danger and moral compromises she'd never had to face. What if I say no? She whispered. Then you leave with an excellent reference and enough severance to cover 6 months of expenses. No threats, no retaliation. Lorenzo's expression was sincere. But Naomi, you saved my empire tonight. I don't forget debts like that. Naomi thought about 18 months of being invisible, of swallowing her pride, of accepting cruelty from a woman who'd been betraying her husband all along. She thought about her Georgetown degree gathering dust while she cleaned toilets and served champagne. She thought about being seen. I accept, Naomi heard herself say. Lorenzo's smile was slow, genuine, and devastating. Good. Because we have a lot of work to do, and I have a feeling you're going to be the best decision I've made in years. As Naomi left his office 30 minutes later, after discussing salary, logistics, and her start date in her new role, she realized her entire life had just changed. She'd translated the truth at a dinner party, watched a mafia boss's wife go silent with guilt, and stepped out of invisibility into something far more dangerous and thrilling than she'd ever imagined. There was no going back now. Naomi stood in front of the mirror in her new apartment. Not an apartment, really, but a fully furnished guest house on the Castello estate that was larger than any place she'd ever lived. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked manicured gardens. The furniture was elegant without being ostentatious, and the closet contained clothes that had appeared overnight. All in her size, all professional and expensive. It had been 3 days since the dinner party. 3 days since she'd translated the truth that destroyed Victoria Castello's carefully constructed lies. 3 days since her entire life had changed. Her phone buzzed. A text from Jasmine. "Big sis, just got your wire transfer. This is way more than usual. Did you get a raise or rob a bank?" Naomi smiled, typing back. "Got a promotion. New position. I'll explain everything when you come home for spring break. Love you." She couldn't tell Jasmine the whole truth yet, that she now worked directly for a mafia boss, that she'd exposed his wife's betrayal, that she'd stepped into a world where people disappeared for knowing too much. Jasmine deserved to finish her senior year without that weight on her shoulders. A knock on the door interrupted her thoughts. Antonio, Lorenzo's head of security, stood on her doorstep looking uncomfortable in his usual black suit. "Morning, Miss Brooks. Boss wants you in his office in 20 minutes. First official day." "I'll be there in 15," Naomi replied. Antonio's weathered face creased into something that might have been approval. "You know what you did at that dinner party took guts. Half the staff is calling you crazy. The other half thinks you're some kind of hero." "What do you think?" "I think you're either very brave or very stupid, and I haven't figured out which yet." He paused. "But for what it's worth, Victoria Castello was poison in this house. You did us all a favor." After he left, Naomi selected a navy blue dress and blazer from her new wardrobe, pulled her hair into a professional bun, and tried to calm her racing heart. This was real. She was really doing this. She was walking into the lion's den with her eyes wide open. Lorenzo's office looked different in daylight. The morning sun streaming through the windows made the space feel less intimidating, though the man behind the desk was no less commanding. He wore a charcoal suit with no tie, the top button of his shirt undone, and reading glasses that made him look almost professorial. "Naomi, come in." He gestured to the chair across from his desk. "Coffee?" "Yes, please." "Black." He poured from a silver service, and Naomi noticed his hands. Strong, scarred knuckles that told stories she probably didn't want to know. These were hands that had built an empire and destroyed anyone who threatened it. "I want to be clear about what this position entails," Lorenzo said, settling back into his chair. "You'll attend all my international business meetings. You'll review contracts in multiple languages. You'll listen, observe, and tell me everything you notice. Not just translations, but body language, tone, inconsistencies. Can you do that?" "Yes, sir." "Stop calling me sir. When we're working, it's Lorenzo." He studied her face. "I need you to understand something, Naomi. The work I do isn't always legal. Most of it isn't. You'll see things, hear things that could be used against me. I need to know you can handle that." Naomi met his dark eyes. "I knew what you were when I took this job. I'm not naive." "No, you're not." Something like respect flickered across his face. But there's a difference between knowing intellectually and seeing it firsthand. If you ever want out, you tell me. No judgment, no retaliation. But once you're in, I need absolute loyalty. You have it. Lorenzo pulled out a file folder, sliding it across the desk. "Your first assignment. I have a meeting this afternoon with a Russian arms dealer named Viktor Kuznetsov. He speaks minimal English and doesn't trust translators, but he doesn't know you speak Russian." Naomi opened the file, scanning the details. Viktor Kuznetsov, 53, former KGB, now one of the largest illegal weapon suppliers in Eastern Europe. The photographs showed a broad-shouldered man with cold eyes and a reputation for violence. "You want me to listen to what he says when he thinks no one understands?" Naomi said. "Exactly. Victor is cautious, paranoid. He'll have his own translator, but he'll also speak to his men in Russian, assuming we can't follow. I need to know if he's planning to screw me over. And if he is..." Lorenzo's smile was dangerous. Then I'll handle it. Your job is just to listen and report. Nothing more. The meeting took place in a private room at one of Lorenzo's restaurants, a high-end Italian place in Midtown that served as a front for less legitimate business. Naomi arrived early, dressed professionally, carrying a leather portfolio that made her look like an executive assistant. Viktor Kuznetsov arrived with 3 men, all built like tanks and carrying obvious weapons beneath their jackets. Victor himself was exactly as intimidating as his photographs suggested, broad-shouldered, cold-eyed, with a handshake that felt like a threat. "This is Naomi Brooks, my business advisor," Lorenzo introduced her smoothly. "She'll be taking notes." Victor barely glanced at her, which was exactly what they wanted. To him, she was just another pretty assistant, decorative and irrelevant. The meeting began in English, with Victor's translator, a thin, nervous man who sweated through his shirt, handling the basics. They discussed shipment schedules, payment terms, delivery logistics. Everything seemed straightforward, but Naomi listened to the Russian conversations happening beneath the English negotiations. Victor spoke to his men in rapid Russian, his tone casual, assuming no one else understood. "These Americans are so trusting," Victor said to the man on his left. "We'll deliver the first shipment as agreed. Let Castello think we're reliable partners. Then on the second shipment, we substitute half the weapons with defective merchandise. By the time he realizes, we'll have his money, and he'll have no recourse." His associate laughed. "And if he complains? Then we remind him that we have connections he doesn't want as enemies. He'll accept the loss, rather than start a war." Naomi kept her face perfectly neutral, her pen moving across her notepad as if she were just taking routine notes. But her mind was racing. Victor was planning to cheat Lorenzo, to deliver faulty weapons and use threats to prevent retaliation. The meeting continued for another hour. When it finally concluded, Victor and his men left with handshakes and promises of a profitable partnership. The moment the door closed, Lorenzo turned to Naomi. "Well?" She told him everything. Every word of Russian conversation, every plan to substitute merchandise, every threat Victor had casually made to his associates. Lorenzo's expression never changed, but something dangerous flickered in his dark eyes. "You're certain?" "Completely. I can write down the exact phrases if you want to verify with another Russian speaker." "That won't be necessary. I trust you." He pulled out his phone, typed a quick message. Viktor Kuznetsov just made the last mistake of his career. "What are you going to do?" Naomi asked, though part of her didn't want to know. "Nothing that concerns you, but there won't be a second shipment, and Victor won't be in a position to cheat anyone else." Lorenzo's voice was matter-of-fact, discussing violence the way other people discuss dinner plans. "You did well today, Naomi. You just saved me several $1,000,000 and a significant amount of trouble. If you're hooked on this story, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss an upload. Your support means everything and helps me bring you more emotional stories like this one." Over the next 2 weeks, Naomi attended 8 more meetings. She translated conversations in Italian, French, and Spanish. She caught inconsistencies in contracts, identified hidden threats in polite negotiations, and watched Lorenzo Castello operate with a strategic brilliance that was both impressive and terrifying. She also learned the reality of his world. Viktor Kuznetsov disappeared. No body found, just gone, as if he'd never existed. A French businessman who tried to shortchange Lorenzo had his accounts mysteriously frozen and his reputation destroyed overnight. A local politician who'd accepted bribes from Lorenzo's rivals suddenly resigned amid scandal. Lorenzo didn't just run a criminal empire. He controlled it with surgical precision, eliminating threats before they could grow, rewarding loyalty and crushing betrayal without hesitation. And Naomi was becoming an essential part of that machine. "You're different," Mrs. Chen observed one evening as Naomi returned to her guest house. The head housekeeper had brought dinner, homemade dumplings that smelled like heaven. Not scared anymore. You walk different, talk different. I'm just doing my job, Naomi said, accepting the food gratefully. Your job is making you powerful. People notice. The other staff, they respect you now. Even Antonio listens when you talk. Mrs. Chen studied her face. But power is dangerous, especially in this world. Don't forget who you are. I won't. But as the days turned into weeks, Naomi wondered if that was true. She was no longer the invisible maid accepting cruelty in silence. She was sitting in rooms where millions of dollars changed hands, where lives were destroyed with a phone call, where the line between legal and illegal blurred into irrelevance. And the most dangerous part? She was starting to understand Lorenzo's world, to see the logic in his ruthlessness, the necessity of his violence, the strange code of honor that governed his decisions. She was also starting to see him differently. Lorenzo Castello wasn't just the dangerous mafia boss everyone feared. He was intelligent, surprisingly well-read, and possessed a dry sense of humor that caught her off guard. He asked about Jasmine's studies, remembered details Naomi had mentioned in passing, and treated her like an equal rather than an employee. "You're thinking too hard again," Lorenzo said one evening. They were in his office reviewing contracts for a real estate deal, one of his few legitimate businesses. "You get this little line right here when you're worried." He gestured to the space between his eyebrows. Naomi set down her pen. "I was just thinking about how much my life has changed in 3 weeks. Regrets? No. Just adjusting." Lorenzo leaned back in his chair, studying her with those penetrating dark eyes. "You want to know something? In 20 years of running this organization, I've never had someone I could trust completely. Everyone wants something. Power, money, protection. Everyone has an angle. And I don't? You could have stayed silent at that dinner party, could have protected yourself and your job. Instead, you risked everything to tell me the truth." His voice softened. "That's not someone working an angle, Naomi. That's someone with integrity, and integrity is the rarest thing in my world." The moment stretched between them, heavy with something Naomi didn't want to name. Then Lorenzo's phone buzzed, shattering the intimacy. He glanced at the screen and his expression hardened. "We have a problem." "What kind of problem?" "The kind that involves your predecessor." He stood, grabbing his jacket. "Victoria is back in the city, and according to my sources, she's looking for revenge." Naomi's blood ran cold. "Against you? Against you." Lorenzo's voice was grim. "She blames you for destroying her marriage, her reputation, her access to my money. And Victoria Castello doesn't accept defeat gracefully." Fear spiked through Naomi's chest. "What do we do?" "We?" Lorenzo moved toward her, his hands settling on her shoulders. "You don't do anything. I handle threats to what's mine. And Naomi, you're under my protection now. Victoria can't touch you." The possessiveness in his voice should have frightened her. Instead, it made her feel safer than she had in weeks. "How did she get back into the city? I thought you—" "I froze her accounts, not her father's. Daddy Dearest still has money and connections." Lorenzo's jaw tightened. "But he's about to learn what happens when you come after someone I care about." The words hung in the air. Someone I care about. Before Naomi could process that, Antonio burst into the office without knocking. "Boss, we've got a situation. Victoria's at the front gate with her father and about 6 private security guards. They're demanding to see you." Lorenzo's expression went cold, lethal. "Bring them to the parlor. And Antonio, make sure our security is visible. I want them to understand exactly what they're walking into." He turned to Naomi. "Stay here. Lock the door. Don't open it for anyone except me or Antonio." "Lorenzo." "Please, Naomi." His hand cupped her face, thumb brushing her cheekbone in a gesture so tender it made her breath catch. "Just this once. Stay safe." Then he was gone, leaving Naomi alone in his office with her heart pounding and the sudden terrifying realization that she cared about Lorenzo Castello far more than was safe or smart or reasonable. She moved to the door, pressing her ear against it, straining to hear the confrontation happening downstairs. Voices carried up. Victoria's shrill fury, a man's deeper tones that must be her father, and Lorenzo's dangerously quiet responses. Then a gunshot shattered the air. Naomi's heart stopped. She grabbed the door handle, every instinct screaming to run toward the danger to make sure Lorenzo was safe. But he'd told her to stay, had trusted her to follow his instructions. Footsteps pounded up the stairs. Naomi backed away from the door, grabbing the letter opener from Lorenzo's desk. A pathetic weapon, but better than nothing. The door opened. Lorenzo stood there, completely unharmed, but his expression was carved from stone. It's over. Victoria and her father are leaving. They won't bother you again. The gunshot, warning shot, into the ceiling. His voice was flat. Victoria's father needed a reminder that threatening my people has consequences. He's been reminded. Naomi set down the letter opener with shaking hands. What did they want? Victoria wanted you fired, humiliated, destroyed. Her father threatened legal action, tried to use his political connections to intimidate me. Lorenzo moved closer, and Naomi could see the violence still simmering beneath his controlled exterior. I explained very clearly what would happen if either of them came near you again. And they believed you? They believed me. His smile was cold. Because I told them exactly what I did to Viktor Kuznetsov when he tried to betray me. Some lessons only need to be taught once. Naomi should be horrified, should be running from this world of threats and violence and casual cruelty. But all she felt was relief that Lorenzo was safe, gratitude that he'd protected her, and a dangerous warmth spreading through her chest every time he looked at her like she was something precious worth defending. Thank you, she whispered. Don't thank me for protecting what's mine. Lorenzo's hand found hers, fingers intertwining. Naomi, I need you to understand something. Victoria's not going to give up. She'll wait, she'll plan, and eventually, she'll try again. Which means you're in danger as long as you're connected to me. Are you trying to scare me into quitting? I'm trying to give you an out while you still can take it. His dark eyes searched her face. Because every day you stay, you sink deeper into my world, and my world destroys good people. Naomi stepped closer, close enough to see the gold flecks in his dark eyes, the tension in his jaw, the way he looked at her like she was both salvation and damnation. What if I don't want an out? What if I choose to stay? Then you're either very brave or very foolish. Someone told me that once. I still haven't figured out which. She smiled slightly. But I'm not going anywhere, Lorenzo. Victoria doesn't scare me. This world doesn't scare me. The only thing that scares me is going back to being invisible. Something shifted in his expression, relief, desire, fear, all tangled together. Naomi, whatever he was going to say was cut off by Antonio's urgent voice from downstairs. Boss, we've got incoming. Multiple vehicles, armed men. This isn't Victoria. This is something bigger. Lorenzo's entire demeanor changed, the man disappearing behind the Mafia boss. He pulled a gun from his desk drawer, checked it with practiced efficiency. How many? At least 20. They're not police. Russian plates on the vehicles. Lorenzo's jaw clenched. Kuznetsov's brother. He must have found out what happened. He turned to Naomi, pressing the gun into her hands. You know how to use this? No. Safety here. Point and pull the trigger. Don't hesitate. His hands cupped her face. There's a panic room behind the bookshelf. Third shelf, red leather book, press down. Get inside and don't come out until I come for you. What about you? I'm going to handle this. He kissed her forehead, quick and desperate. Go now. As Naomi ran toward the bookshelf, Gunfire erupted from outside. The sound of breaking glass, shouting in Russian, the world exploding into violence. She found the hidden lever, watched the bookshelf swing open to reveal a steel door with a keypad. But before she could enter, she heard Lorenzo's voice from downstairs, speaking Russian with perfect fluency she hadn't known he possessed. And the words he was saying made her blood run cold. Naomi froze at the entrance to the panic room, Lorenzo's gun heavy in her trembling hands. Every instinct screamed at her to hide, to follow his instructions, to survive. But the Russian words echoing up from downstairs held her captive. Lorenzo's voice, cold and commanding. "Dmitry Kuznetsov, I've been expecting you." A rougher voice responded in Russian. "You murdered my brother. Did you think there would be no consequences? Your brother tried to cheat me, he made his choice. And now you'll pay for yours." Naomi's mind raced. This was Kuznetsov's brother, come for revenge. 20 armed men against Lorenzo's security. The odds were terrible. She should hide, should protect herself like Lorenzo had demanded. But then she heard something else. A third voice speaking Russian in a whisper, barely audible. She pressed closer to the stairwell, straining to hear. "Boss, the girl, the translator. She's the real target. Orders are to take her alive. Kuznetsov wants her to pay for what she cost his brother." Her blood turned to ice. They weren't just here for Lorenzo. They were here for her. And Lorenzo didn't know. Naomi looked at the open panic room, then at the stairwell leading down to the violence. Every rational thought told her to hide. But Lorenzo was down there facing 20 armed men, not knowing that their real objective was to take her. If she hid and they captured her anyway, he'd trade everything to get her back. His empire, his life, everything. She'd seen enough in 3 weeks to know that with absolute certainty. She couldn't let that happen. Naomi checked the gun's safety like Lorenzo had shown her, took a deep breath, and started down the stairs. The first floor was chaos. Through the parlor doorway, she could see Lorenzo behind the overturned couch, Antonio and 4 other guards positioned around the room. Broken glass covered the floor from shattered windows. At least 3 bodies in Russian tactical gear lay motionless near the entrance. Dmitry Kuznetsov stood in the foyer, protected by a wall of his own men. He was younger than his brother, maybe 40, with the same cold eyes but leaner, hungrier, dangerous in a different way. "Castello," Dmitry called out in English, "you have something that belongs to me, the woman who destroyed my brother. Give her to me, and your men live." "Over my dead body," Lorenzo responded. Dmitry smiled. "That can be arranged." This was the moment. Naomi could hide, let this play out. Hope Lorenzo survived. Or she could use the one weapon she had that no one expected. She stepped into the foyer, gun lowered but visible, and spoke in perfect Russian. "Is that really why you're here, Dmitry? For revenge?" Every head turned toward her. Lorenzo's face went white with fury and fear. "Naomi, get back upstairs now." But Naomi kept her eyes on Dmitry, switching seamlessly to Russian. "Because I heard your man tell you the truth. I heard him say that taking me alive was the real objective, that your brother's death was just an excuse." Dmitry's expression flickered. Surprise, then calculation. "You speak Russian?" "6 languages, actually. It's what I do." Naomi's voice was steadier than she felt. "So, let me translate something for everyone here. You're not here for revenge, Dmitry. You're here because the Chinese businessman I exposed, Mr. Wang, hired you to kidnap me. He wants revenge for the deal he lost when I revealed he was working with Victoria Castello." The silence that followed was deafening. Lorenzo's voice was lethal. "Is that true?" Dmitry's jaw tightened, but he didn't deny it. "Does it matter? The result is the same. You have something I've been paid to take." "Then you've already failed," Naomi said, still in Russian. "Because I heard your contingency plan too. If you can't take me alive, you're supposed to burn this place to the ground and blame it on a rival family. Wang wants Lorenzo destroyed either way. She switched to English, her voice carrying across the room. But here's what none of you know. Mr. Wang's wife? She's having an affair with his business partner. I heard them talking at the dinner party in Mandarin, making plans to eliminate Wang and take over his companies. All that pillow talk about his business dealings? She's been feeding his partner everything. Naomi pulled out her phone. She'd recorded everything from that dinner party, a habit from her Georgetown days. I have 3 hours of audio. Every language, every conversation, including Mrs. Wang discussing how she's going to poison her husband and make it look like a heart attack. She looked directly at Dimitri. Now, you can try to take me and start a war with Lorenzo Castello. Or you can take this recording back to Mr. Wang and let him know his wife is planning to murder him. I imagine he'd pay significantly more than whatever you were offered to kidnap me. The calculation in Dimitri's eyes was visible. He was a businessman first, a soldier second, and Naomi had just offered him a more profitable alternative. How do I know this recording is real? Dimitri asked in Russian. Naomi played a 30-second clip, Mrs. Wang's voice clear and damning in Mandarin, discussing poison and timing and her lover's promise to help her. She translated into Russian as it played. Dimitri listened, then laughed. A sharp, genuine sound. You're either brilliant or insane. I've heard that a lot lately, Naomi replied in Russian. Do we have a deal? You expect me to just leave? After what Castello did to my brother? Your brother tried to cheat him. Victor knew the risks. Naomi's voice softened slightly. But you're smarter than Victor was. You know when to cut your losses and take a better offer. That's why you'll survive when he didn't. For a long moment, Dimitri studied her. Then he nodded slowly. Send me the recording. All of it. And we're done here. Dimitri! One of his men protested. We're done, Dimitri repeated firmly. He looked at Lorenzo. Castello, you have an interesting employee. I suggest you keep her close. Women this smart are dangerous to lose. Lorenzo hadn't moved, his gun still trained on Dimitri. If you ever come back here, I won't. I'm a businessman, not a martyr. Dimitri gestured to his men. We're leaving. As the Russians filed out, Naomi's legs started to shake. The adrenaline that had carried her through the confrontation was draining away, leaving her weak and trembling. The moment the door closed, Lorenzo was across the room, his hands on her shoulders, his eyes blazing with fury and something that looked like terror. What the hell were you thinking? I told you to hide. You could have been killed. They were here for me, Naomi said, her voice shaking. I heard them planning it. If I'd hidden, they would have torn this place apart to find me. People would have died. You would have... I don't care. Lorenzo's voice cracked. Do you understand? I don't care about the house or the men or any of it. I care about you being safe. Well, I care about you. The words burst out of her before she could stop them. I care about you surviving, about your men not dying for me, about not being the reason your empire burns down. They stared at each other, both breathing hard, the truth finally spoken aloud in the wreckage of Lorenzo's parlor. Naomi. Lorenzo's voice dropped to a whisper, his hands moving to cup her face. Do you have any idea what it did to me to see you walk into a room full of armed men? To watch you negotiate with someone who could have killed you without hesitation? I had to. You didn't know their real target. You would have traded everything to protect me, and I couldn't... Her voice broke. I couldn't let you do that. Why not? His forehead pressed against hers. Why wouldn't you let me protect you? Because you matter to me. The confession felt like jumping off a cliff. More than is smart or safe or reasonable. You matter, Lorenzo. His kiss was desperate, fierce. 3 weeks of tension finally breaking. Naomi melted into him, her hands fisting in his shirt, the gun clattering to the floor as she forgot everything except the taste of him, the feeling of his arms around her, the way he held her like she was something precious and terrifying all at once. When they finally broke apart, Lorenzo rested his forehead against hers, both of them breathing hard. I told myself I wouldn't do this, that you deserved better than a man like me. But Naomi, I can't. His voice roughened. I can't watch you walk away. I need you too much. Then don't watch me walk away, Naomi whispered. Let me stay. If you stay, everything changes. You won't just work for me. You'll be mine. My partner, my equal, the person I trust above everyone else. His dark eyes searched her face. And that makes you a target for everyone who wants to hurt me. Are you ready for that? Naomi thought about the invisible maid she'd been 3 weeks ago, swallowing cruelty and accepting invisibility because she was afraid to be seen. That woman was gone, burned away by the fire of Lorenzo Castello's world. I'm ready, she said. Lorenzo kissed her again, softer this time, a promise and a claim all at once. Around them, his men were securing the house, dealing with the aftermath of the attack. But in that moment, it was just the two of them, standing in the wreckage and ruins, choosing each other despite every logical reason not to. Antonio cleared his throat from the doorway. Boss? Sorry to interrupt, but we need to discuss security measures, and there's something you should know about the recording Miss Brooks mentioned. They broke apart reluctantly. Lorenzo's hand found Naomi's, fingers intertwining as they turned to face Antonio. What about it? Naomi asked. Antonio's weathered face creased into something that might have been admiration. We pulled the metadata. That recording was made 3 weeks ago at the dinner party, which means you've been sitting on explosive information about Wang's wife this entire time. I record everything at these events, Naomi explained. Georgetown trained us to document everything. I didn't know it would be useful until tonight. Useful? Antonio laughed. Miss Brooks, you just prevented a war, exposed a murder plot, and turned Kuznetsov's revenge mission into a business transaction. That's not useful. That's genius. Lorenzo squeezed her hand, pride evident in his expression. I told you she was the best decision I'd made in years. Over the next few hours, they dealt with the aftermath. Police were called. Lorenzo had enough of them on his payroll to ensure the official report would reflect a home invasion attempt with no mention of Russian arms dealers or kidnapping plots. The bodies were removed, the damage assessed, security protocols updated. And through it all, Lorenzo kept Naomi close, his hand on her back, his body between her and any potential threat. The possessiveness both comforting and thrilling. It was nearly dawn when they finally returned to his office, exhausted and running on adrenaline fumes. Lorenzo poured them both whiskey, settled on the couch, and pulled Naomi down beside him. Tell me about Georgetown, he said quietly. Tell me about the woman you were before all this. So she did. She told him about her dreams of diplomatic service, about her mother's cancer and the medical bills that had destroyed those dreams, about choosing invisibility because it was safer than being seen. She told him about Jasmine, brilliant and kind, and everything good that Naomi was fighting to protect. And Lorenzo told her his story, growing up in Brooklyn, watching his father build an empire through violence and fear, losing his mother to that same violence, taking over at 25 and swearing to be different. Better, smarter, more strategic. I'm not a good man, Naomi, he said, his arm around her shoulders, her head resting against his chest. I've done things that would horrify you, hurt people, destroyed lives, made decisions that kept me awake at night. I know what you are, Naomi replied softly. I'm not naive enough to pretend otherwise. Then why stay? She lifted her head to look at him. Because you've never lied to me about who you are. Because you see me as an equal, not a possession. Because when Viktor Kuznetsov tried to cheat you, you didn't just kill him. You made sure his family was provided for, that his children wouldn't suffer for his mistakes. I heard you on the phone with your accountant, setting up the trust fund. Lorenzo went very still. You heard that? I hear everything, remember? 6 languages. She smiled slightly. You're ruthless to your enemies and incredibly loyal to your people. You have a code, even if it's not one society would recognize. And you make me feel like I matter, like my mind and my skills and my courage are valuable. Do you know how rare that is? You do matter. More than you know. He kissed the top of her head. Which is why I need to tell you something. About Victoria. Naomi tensed. What about her? She's dead. Her father called an hour ago. Lorenzo's voice was matter-of-fact. Car accident. Brake failure. Very tragic. The words hung in the air, heavy with implication. Naomi should be horrified, should be running from a man who could order someone's death so casually, but all she felt was a strange sense of relief. Did you? No. But I also didn't stop it when I learned what was being planned. Lorenzo's dark eyes met hers. Victoria was never going to stop, Naomi. She would have kept coming after you, kept trying to destroy what we're building. This was the only way to end it. So you let her die? I let someone who threatened you face the consequences of her choices. His hand cupped her face. I won't apologize for protecting you. Ever. Naomi should feel guilty, should feel something other than this dark satisfaction that the woman who'd tormented her was gone. But she'd changed in these 3 weeks. Lorenzo's world had changed her, revealed parts of herself she hadn't known existed. Okay, she whispered. Okay. I understand why you did it. I understand this world enough now to know that some threats don't respond to mercy. She took a shaky breath. I just hope I don't lose myself completely in all this. You won't. I won't let you. Lorenzo pulled her closer. We'll find the balance, Naomi, between who we are and what we have to do to survive. Together. As dawn broke over the city, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold, Naomi let herself believe in that promise. She'd translated the truth at a dinner party and watched a Mafia boss's wife go silent with guilt. She'd stepped out of invisibility into danger and power, and a love that was as complicated as it was consuming. There was no going back to the invisible maid she'd been. That woman was gone, transformed by fire and choice into someone stronger, more dangerous, and far more alive. And as Lorenzo's arms tightened around her, Naomi realized she didn't want to go back. Not to invisibility, not to safety, not to a world where she was seen as less than. She'd found her place in the shadows and light of Lorenzo Castello's empire, and she was staying. 3 months later, Naomi stood in the conference room of Castello Enterprises, Lorenzo's legitimate real estate company, translating rapid-fire negotiations between Italian investors and Chinese developers. She wore a tailored Armani suit, her natural hair styled in elegant twists, and the diamond on her left hand caught the light every time she gestured. Lorenzo sat at the head of the table watching her work with undisguised pride and possessiveness. They'd announced their engagement 2 weeks ago, shocking the city's elite and cementing Naomi's position as untouchable. The negotiation concluded successfully, millions of dollars changing hands, partnerships formed. As the investors filed out, Lorenzo pulled Naomi aside. You're brilliant, you know that? You might have mentioned it once or twice, she teased. Jasmine called. She wants to know if we're still coming to her graduation next month. Naomi smiled, thinking of her sister who'd been cautiously supportive of the relationship once she'd learned the truth. Jasmine had been wary at first. Who wouldn't be when their sister announced she was engaged to a Mafia boss? But Lorenzo had won her over with patient charm and a generous donation to Howard's scholarship fund in their mother's name. Wouldn't miss it, Naomi said. Lorenzo's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, his expression darkening slightly. We have a meeting tonight. French arms dealers who only speak Parisian French. They're being cagey about their real intentions. Then I guess it's a good thing you have a translator who can hear what they're not saying. Naomi straightened his tie, a gesture of intimacy that still made her heart race. What would you do without me? Fortunately, I'll never have to find out. He kissed her, slow and deep, a promise and a possession. Ready to go to work? Naomi thought about the invisible maid who'd been terrified to speak up, who'd swallowed cruelty in silence, who'd made herself small to survive. That woman was gone, replaced by someone who stood in boardrooms and back rooms, who translated truth and lies with equal skill, who'd chosen danger and love over safety and invisibility. Always, she said, taking his hand, let's go hear what they're really saying. As they left the office together, partners in business and life, Naomi couldn't help but smile. She'd spoken 6 languages at a dinner party and watched a mafia boss's wife go silent with guilt. That single moment of courage had transformed her entire life, and she wouldn't change a single thing. Thank you so much for watching until the end. If you loved this story, check out the other videos on your screen now. I think you'll really enjoy them. And don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. See you in the next story.